Hi everyone. In this video, we are going to learn interactive dashboards in Excel. I'm going to divide this dashboard session into two parts. Now let's look at the part one of it. Dashboards in Excel are powerful tools that allows user to visualize and analyze data in a concise and interactive manner. They provide a consolidated view of important information and helps user make informed decisions. Why do we need dashboards? Dashboards enhances decision making, improves efficiency, and foster collaboration. The use of dashboards in Excel offers several benefits. Before I list down the uses of dashboard, let's go to the Excel file and understand how the dashboard actually looks like. I have a call center data here. This is the data set that I have with four columns, which is date, time interval, calls offered, and calls answered. And this date range is from 2017 to 2019. Let me put the filter on. Alt DFF, the shortcut for filter. And here we see the date is ranging from 2017 to 2020. We have almost 3.5 years of data here, because for 2020 we don't have the data for complete 12 months. We have data only for 6 months for 2020. This is a pretty huge data. The reason being that for one particular day, there are 24 entries, as in one day there are 24 hours. So for each day in a year, there are 365 days in a year, and for each day there are 24 entries. This way, the total number of rows are 30,650 rows, and we have 3.5 years of data here. The time interval, as I mentioned, is for 24 hours. This is an hourly time interval data. This is the calls offered for that particular duration and the calls answered out of the calls offered data. With this simple information, we won't be able to do a complete analysis of this data or the call flow. We need some more values to be added on for us to analyze this data better. First, let me extract the month of the days here. To extract the month from the date here, the formula is text and the value is the date, comma, and I want the months to be as Jan, so let me keep it as MMM because I want only the 3 letters for the month. I don't need the complete name. Within double quotes, let me type the first letter as capital M and then the small m here. This is the formula. Now I enter this formula. Let me hit enter. Now I have the first letter in capital and the next two letters in the small case. Double click on this plus icon and the whole formula will be copied to all the rows. Okay. Now let me just apply filter on this, for which it's Alt D F and F again. Now we see that we have the months. We have all 12 months data here. Now let me get the week number data. To get the week number, the formula is equal to week number. The serial number is our date. If our week begins on Sunday, then select 1. If our week begins from Monday, then select 2. So in our case, week starts from Monday. I'm going to select 2 and close the bracket. 1st of Jan 2017 is the week 1. Double click on this plus button and the details will be copied to all the row. Again, to check, Alt D F and F to get the filter on, and we have 53 weeks here. So in a year we have 53 weeks, and the complete 53 weeks is now recorded here. I don't want the numbers, I want the details to be as week 1, week 2, week 3. To do that, so let me mention week number, and to get the week number is equal to, let me put the week in double quotes, week, and concatenate it with the previous value, which is this. Enter. Here I'm using the concatenate function where I want the prefix to be as week and the number to be the week number. I don't want any spaces in between, so I just have mentioned the row number here. Enter. Now we have this as week 1 and so on. After double click, the formula is copied to the whole row. Again, to check if we have complete V53 details, let me put the filter on RDFF, and here we can check that we have 53 weeks. 1 to 53 week is now recorded here. All of the data which is showing here is week 1 and so on, but this is actually the formula. When you click on it, you see the formula from the formula bar and not just the text. I want this to be showing only as text, so that if I delete this column, we should still have this as week 1 or week 2, and removing the column should not affect the data from this row. To do that, let me copy the whole range, Control C, paste special, for that which is Alt E S and V for values. Click OK. Now we have only the text which is week 1. Even in the formula bar it shows week 1. It does not give us any different formula here. I can easily remove this column as I don't want it to be as 1, 2, 3, 4 as the week number format. I want it to be week 1, week 2, week 3. We got our output as the required format, so I can easily delete this column now. Okay, now the column is deleted and we have this week number column here. We have now month and the week number. Let me segregate the day numbers here. To do that, let me just type days as the header, and we have a day function here is equal to day, and we just need the serial number which is our date. Select the date here and close the bracket. We don't need anything else. And we had this as a 1st of Jan, so this is day 1. And again double click on this plus icon and the date is copied to the whole row. Again apply filter on this column as well. And we see that we have 31 days here. And the last thing that we are going to add here is the day name. Day name is equal to, like the way we did for months, it's the same text, and the value is our date value, and I want all the 7 letters to be shown from the day. So let me type within double quotes, first letter capital D and then the small letters. We have 6 characters in a day. I just mentioned that here. and hit OK. Double click and we have all our days coming here. Again, put the filter on to see if we have all the 7 days of this week. And here we see we have all the 7 days listed here. The way we did for week number, I'm going to select this whole range because I don't want the formulas here. I only need the values. We have already done the copy paste for this, but I can include this again. Let me copy the data of all these 4 columns. Copy this, Control C, and instead of normal paste, let me right click. And you see paste special here. We can use a shortcut key or you can go to paste special and paste values. Now there's no formula here in the formula bar. It's just a text that we have here. Let me do the same formatting as we have done for this one. Let me select the column like this. Go to home and take the format painter and just go across all these columns. Now we have the same format for all the columns. Using these data, now we'll have to plot the pivot table. Using the pivot table, we can concise this huge data into a easily understandable data. Select this whole range, go to Insert and select Pivot Table. Next worksheet. Drag the day to the rows column. After we drag the date here, we get these many categories from the date details, which is years, quarters, month, and the date. But we have already calculated all these things separately. Let me put the years in filter. And I'm going to keep the quarterly data here and remove the month data. Date is also removed. Let me drag the calls answer data here. As soon as I drag the call answer data here, this automatically changes to sum of calls answered. Let me put the calls offer data as well here. Now our pivot chart shows the quarterly data. Now let me just take the overall data. I don't want the quarterly specific data. I want the overall data. I want the overall data for all the 4 years or the 3.5 years data that we have. So let me remove the quarterly data here. And now I just have sum of calls answered and sum of calls offered. Using these two data, I can even get the missed calls or the abandoned calls data. Let me put the calls offered first and calls answered second. Abandoned call is nothing but we received so many calls, and out of these many calls, how many calls were answered, and the remaining are the abandoned calls. I don't have to divide or add anything. We can go to another feature in Pivot, go to Pivot Analyze, and we have something called as Field Items and Sets. Click on this and go to Calculated Field. Through this calculated field, we are now going to check total calls abandoned rate. So total abandoned calls. To get that, we'll have to look for the calls offered data minus calls answered. Okay, and now we have the sum of abandoned calls. We can rename it now. Sum of calls, sum of total abandoned, it's already too big. We can just mention it as total abandoned calls. Total abandoned calls name is not accepted. So let me delete total and mention only as abandoned calls. Now I have my total abandoned calls data here. I need to know what is the total calls offered for one day. This is for overall 3.5 years data, but I want the data of the average calls coming in every day based on this 3.5 years of data. Let me go to the pivot field again and let me drag the calls offered data here. This again shows sum of calls offered, but I don't need the sum, I need the average. So let me go to value field settings, select average, and the name also changes to average of calls offered. Let me just remove off and let me just mention average calls offered. Now the average calls offered is 500. Let me remove these many decimal numbers. I have now reduced it to two decimal numbers. Also, I want to know the call abandoned percentage. To get the abandoned call percentage, let me apply another calculated field, and here abandoned percentage, and the formula is calls offered insert minus calls answered insert divided by calls offered. Okay, and we have this one in the decimals. Let me just click on this percentage and this will shift to percentage. To increase the decimal value, let me click on this and we can rename it again as abandoned percentage. All these data that we have is for overall calls for the 3.5 years of the data that we have. And we have a filter here which has got the data for all these 4 years or 3.5 years. Let me rearrange it where I want the average calls to be after the total calls answered. I can simply rearrange these. Let me just drag the average calls after total calls offered. Now I have all these fields rearranged, and the first is calls offered, answered, average calls, abandoned calls, and abandoned percentage. These are called as the key performance indicators. Looking at these key performance indicators, one can clearly understand how the business is performing, what's the total number of calls answered. The abandoned call percentage is very less, which is 1.7%, which is good. And the average calls offered every day is almost 500 calls every day. With this one line information, we have now understood that when it comes to abandon percentage, the team is doing really good and they have almost answered all the calls that has been offered to their team. Now let's check out on what we did so far. Before creating a dashboard, we need to collect the required data to show in the dashboard. The steps that we took is the preparation to create an insightful dashboard. The first step was we created days, months, and week columns from the data table. Next, we created a pivot table for the whole year. We derived the KPIs, which is the key performance indicators, to understand an overview of the overall business performance. And we also added average per day and abandoned percentage values to the KPIs.